Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Newbie Photographer Podcast. I think my voice is extra low today. We go down an octave or two? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Newbie Photographer Podcast. We've got some Christmas music in the background, or at least holiday sounding music in the background for a change. Yes, that is if I can point in the right direction, my Christmas tree to the right of me. And that my daughter and I put up just the other night, actually. It was kind of a fun little evening together. I hope you all are having a wonderful holiday season. And I also hope, too, that during this time, despite the craziness, the busyness between work and then all of the holiday plans, that you'll be able to take a step back, take a deep breath, and just really enjoy the whole process a lot. For those of you that are live streaming with us today, don't hesitate to jump into the conversation. Would love to have you ask questions, comment on the conversation at hand, which is actually a really interesting and important one. I'm personally excited about it. I'm going to introduce our guest here in just a second. For those of you that are listening to this after the fact, make sure to follow us at Noobie, N-O-O-B-I-E, podcast on Instagram. And you can keep up to date with the upcoming live stream schedule so you can come be part of some of these shows. We'll do 1 or 2 a week. All right. Well, on that note, I want to bring back, actually, a return guest for the Newbie Podcast. Danielle Blewitt is here with me. Danielle, thank you so much for coming back to put up with me and hang out with me.
Thank you. I feel so honored to be invited back. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we've had some really good conversation. That's in the past episodes, and that's part of the reason that you're back. And I really appreciate you're a very intentional, very specific communicator. And it's something that I have to work on a lot more, so I can kind of take lead from you in this. But we're going to get into a conversation today about the significance of mini sessions. And I'm giving it away here, but the significance of mini sessions for the sake of building a family portrait business. And I guess this kind of set up the conversation. We've been doing this series called I Wish I Knew. And the premise is that I have established photographers on the show to share a big idea or principle they wish they knew a bit more about when they were starting their photography business. Let me just go ahead and let you answer what that thing would be, just for the sake of conversation.
So we're going to be talking about the value of mini sessions and how they can really, truly help you grow your family photography business. Or I'm sure that works in I'm in the family photography space, so that's just what I default to. But the true value in actually how they can help you grow your business. And whenever we talk about all of these things, and I listen to so many podcasts, and there's so much learning. Like, I love consuming stuff like this, but whenever we're actually talking about mini sessions, they are a very practical, tactical thing that you can actually do. Like, people that are listening or watching, now or, in the future, they can actually take stuff from this and actually apply it in their business. So many sessions aren't just mindset or just like encouragement. They're actually like step-by-step things that you can actually apply in your business, which is, I love talking about minis.
Yeah. This is something I love that you're highlighting the importance of practical information. It's certainly been our intention here with this show. We're not just putting out content for the sake of making noise or just to have some content to put out on social media. Certainly not the case with my other podcast, the Boca Podcast. We've done about 600 episodes there. And again, the intention is about practical content. We're getting ready to actually launch our first conference, the Newbie Photographer Conference. Just a quick little plug, newbieconference.com for anybody who's listening in or watching. Make sure to check that out if you haven't signed up yet. But the goal, even with that conference, Danielle, is practicality, because you alluded to something there which has been very, very popular in the industry, which is the idea of inspiration or quick little tips and tricks we just throw out there, and they sound fun, cute, and you feel good for a second. But then the question is, what do you actually go do with that information? How do you go apply it to your business and actually see impact or results from that information that you're collecting? Because at the end of the day, like, we can sound good saying that we're reading a book or listening to a podcast, but the question is, what are we actually doing with that information? And I think that's really important. So yeah, we're definitely going to get into a super practical conversation here in just a second. Do me a favor, if you will, just briefly introduce yourself to those that may not have heard you in the first episode here on the podcast.
So I am a Pittsburgh-based family and newborn photographer. I'm also a filmmaker, and I also teach other photographers, marketing tips and tricks organically to help grow their businesses. That's me in a nutshell.
Perfect. And as you were talking there, I was I put up your website on the screen, Danielle, DanielleBlewitt photography.com, DanielleBlewitt.photography.com. I have that up on the screen as well. For those of you that are live streaming, you can see this. And of course, we'll link to this in the show notes at newbiepodcast.com. Got to get my podcast straight. And then also going to go ahead and pop up your Instagram here, Danielle Blewitt Photography. And we'll make sure to link to that in the show notes at newbiepodcast.com as well. Danielle, let's go ahead and get back into the conversation at hand, though. This topic of mini sessions for the sake of building a portrait business. What was the turning point in your business where you realized the significance of this approach to building your family portrait business?
So whenever I got started, I was doing basically just a whole bunch of independent full sessions and just kind of taking them as they came at me, trying a whole bunch of different things, which is what many new photographers do. And I want to say I actually waited a whole year before I even tried minis. And it was mainly out of fear. I was, there was a lot of stuff that made me uncomfortable about doing them, the speed at which you had to do them, the fear of missing a shot, just time management, and just that was pretty much what stopped me from doing them for so long. However, early on in my business, I adopted this mantra that I just said, you know what, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's what pushed me. I said, okay, I just have to figure this out and just do it. So about a year in, I added them to my business. And for a few years now, I have been doing them and tweaking them and learning. And honestly, today I want to say, looking back, that it was mini sessions that really, truly helped me grow my business. Because when you do mini sessions, you are basically giving your clients the opportunity to work with you at a lower price point, which is sort of, some people, that are price shopping or, not ready to commit to a full session or like a bigger investment. Minis are perfect for them.
Yeah.
Minis are also perfect for your clients that just want like a milestone session. Like maybe they did a newborn photo shoot and they want a 6-month photo shoot and they don't want to invest for a full session. The bigger your client base, the bigger your network reach. So because word of mouth is so popular for photographers or any small business really, the more clients you have, the more reach you have. So, you have access now to all of these clients that are booking you for these sessions. And basically all of that together, it just kind of builds to really help you grow your client base and build your business. Now in 2022, this year, I did just shy of 100 mini sessions this year.
Wow.
And, in addition to all of my full sessions, it didn't feel overwhelming, but I want to say that it accounted for over 30% of my income. So like the impact of mini sessions is huge. Like it definitely has a place in my business and continues to do so.
And we're going to talk about how you've implemented that. Of course, the kind of the practical steps, as you alluded to earlier, for our listeners as well, if they want to begin to implement this in their business. But I want to highlight something that you just said, which I think is super important, a big takeaway for all of us, new photographers, established photographers, especially in 2022, first world culture, which is that the idea of being uncomfortable, we all kind of shy. I have a tendency anyway of shying away from feeling uncomfortable, whether that's emotionally, mentally, certainly as we're trying to start a business, maybe facing difficult situations with a relationship, or maybe even just trying to start a relationship. Whatever the scenario might be, in modern culture, it's very easy to just shy away from something that makes us feel uncomfortable. And there is so much opportunity. Actual harm aside, there's so much opportunity on the other side of feeling a little bit nervous, a little bit shy, a little bit uncomfortable. There's so much opportunity, not only in our personal lives, but certainly in our business lives, if we're willing to intentionally, strategically, certainly take risks that may in the moment make us feel uncomfortable. We may have to work a little bit harder than normal, but the opportunities are much greater as a result. And I don't know, I would assume about you, Danielle, that you're much like me, are one who doesn't want to just kind of coast through life, exist through life. You want to actually get out and have the potential experiences that are out there and available for us, again, personally and professionally. But in order to do that, we have to take a few risks and feel a little bit uncomfortable along the way.
I'm going to use this right here as an example, because me talking live, teaching live makes me uncomfortable. But here I am, third time on with you. But I know I love this stuff. I love talking business. Like anybody, family, friends, anybody, they're probably like, oh my gosh, that girl just wants to talk about business and photography. I love talking about it.
Yeah.
I also love, working with other photographers. It's something that I truly love, but just getting over the fear of actually being, on video, or talking to people live is, just something that I just said I just have to get over it and do it. So I still use that.
And I love that you've taken that chance, and now we've had, like you said, 3 different conversations. I would liken it to skydiving. I've been skydiving a couple of different times.
Cool.
And part of the reason I did it was because I'm super afraid of heights. I mean, I could be 100 feet up in the air and it's really just throwing my game off. So I thought, well, okay, I'll face this and I'll go do this thing that's kind of crazy. I mean, it seems exciting, but certainly it's nerve-wracking. And there is that nervousness before you jump, but if you're willing to just kind of push through that few minutes of nervousness and then go through with that, the experiencing the other side is literally, it's like nothing I've ever experienced before. Not only the actual physical experience, the tangible experience of seeing the scenery and literally falling through clouds and, the rush of that whole experience is just mind blowing. But the other thing too, is just the sense of what is possible after you, especially after that first time landed on the ground. The feeling that you get of, oh my word, I could literally go do anything. I physically had a buzz after we landed that first time. It's absolutely nuts. I wouldn't have had all those feelings and the experience had I not been willing to push past the little bit of discomfort. If I knew there was real harm, yeah, exactly. If I knew there was real harm there, I know there's always a chance of harm, and we can live our lives with playing the what if game all day long, and again, we miss out, right? All the safety precautions were taken. I think the person that I jumped with, because I was jumping with an instructor, I think had, 1,500 jumps or something like that. So highly experienced. There's this whole safety protocol. So I knew that it was a pretty safe idea, this thing that we were doing, despite the nerves, right? But again, go ahead.
His survival rate was really high, so
That's true,
you went with him.
yeah, I could take some comfort in that. But again, just the point here is just to encourage everybody, and you're leading by example, but I want to encourage everybody listening and watching, take a risk, step outside your comfort zone in the little box that you live in and take a risk, because on the other side of the little bit of nerves, a little bit of discomfort is really incredible opportunity and experiences. So, all right, well, I want to get to the practical application here, Danielle. Yes. And you mentioned to me before we got started that you have 4 kind of specific ways that you've implemented this in your business. And I'd love for you to share that with our listeners so they can consider doing the same.
All right. So when we're talking about mini sessions, like the one thing that we didn't do, and maybe we should have started with this, it's always assumed that people know what mini sessions are, but just to define exactly what we're talking about, mini sessions are much smaller mini sessions compared to what you offer for a full session. Mini sessions are done, at a certain time and a place, and they are stacked together. So you wouldn't drive to one location for one single mini session, drive back. The value in actually maximizing the profit potential of mini sessions is doing them back to back to back. So it's a grouping and whatever you're comfortable with. So basically mini in scale. So just wanted to put that out there.
Can I ask how much time you'll spend with each client or group of clients that you're photographing for that one mini session on average?
So for me in my business, I do 20 minutes.
Brilliant.
And so 20-minute increments. So I could shoot 3 in an hour. That's my comfortable zone. I know some people, will stretch into a super mini. I've heard this just boggles my mind, but I've heard people do 5-minute minis. Whoa. And that's just the logistics of actually, all of that, just that I'm very comfortable at 20 minutes. That's my sweet spot.
That sounds perfect. And what percentage of your normal portrait session fee is a mini session fee? Roughly.
Mini sessions, I will, they are half roughly.
Okay.
Because I have an upsell potential. So technically speaking, I can make more money off of a mini session than I can a full session. So when I talk about profit potential, it's actually higher for mini sessions for me. And then add in the value of actually, doing so many back to back, only leaving my house one time, making whatever 20, 30-minute commute to the location. And then I batch everything afterwards.
Yeah, and it's
So,
an incredible opportunity for sure. And by the way, I appreciate you defining that, especially for newer photographers who are even new to the concept. But let's jump into those 4 steps.
okay. So, all right. So one of the things in order to have successful mini sessions, you have to book your mini sessions. And I am a person that came from the marketing world. So I want to say, marketing is so important in so many ways. However, marketing is so important for your mini sessions. Basically, in order to book your mini sessions, you need to create so much hype. You need to create sort of like an event, like a launch for your mini sessions. There's, all of the things that okay, this is my marketing brain talking, but all of the things that you would think like marketing 101, scarcity, exclusivity. So, what I do is I launch my mini sessions as if it were an event. So, I build a mailing list all throughout the year. I constantly have a lead generator on my website that collects and says, if you want mini sessions, sign up here. And I send out, emails. There's almost like a pre-launch that says, mini sessions for this date is launching at this time. And, it's first come, first serve. And my mini sessions sell out in minutes. Like they are gone pretty much the second that they are sent out. So the super importance on actually marketing them and creating all of the hype around them has to be there, even more so than just like your regular sessions.
Why would you say even more so?
Just because it depends on what you do, but like if you're, wedding photographer, engagement photos, you're a newborn photographer, those things just kind of naturally, organically come, depending on when they're needed. A baby's born and they say we need newborn photos. Just, I don't know. That's just how
I guess if you're having to try to
handle.
build up, as you mentioned earlier, you're trying to stack multiple sessions. It's for a specific date. You're actually specifying that versus being able to schedule it based on whatever the client's whim. It's something that you have to bring people to, as opposed to you
Yes.
going to them at their convenience. So that makes sense. There's a little bit more intensity there and a need to actually create a little bit more hype than normal.
There's definitely scarcity too. So like mini sessions, there's only so many that photographers can shoot at a time, whereas like I launch my booking schedule the same way. However, it's over the course of 4 months, and the time slots are there. So there's just sort of like the urgency, the scarcity of wanting to get one of those handful of slots for people
And
that want them.
and genuine scarcity too. I have to add, because
Yeah.
I have to tell you, you've probably seen this in the industry as well, but there is a fake scarcity that photographers will use, especially in education courses, and ironically, web-based pre-recorded educational courses. They still try to create a sense of scarcity, which is quite misleading and manipulative, and it's really off-putting to me. So I don't know. There's a certain sense of cynicism that I have when it comes to this idea of creating scarcity, but there's legitimate scarcity here because you only have so much time. You can only fit so many people into that particular time. So
Yes.
it's almost built in, but you have to highlight it.
Yeah. I mean, even just like the price point too, the fact that I don't offer these on demand. Photographers, whenever they offer mini sessions, they have set dates, set times. So it's not unlimited. So, just the fact that people want to get, that lower price point or book, a mini session versus a full, it just kind of naturally helps. But doing all of the marketing, and kind of creating the hype around that will really help you sell them.
Okay.
And then,
So we're starting with that process of booking, and particularly a very intentional effort on the marketing side of creating a sense of scarcity, exclusivity, and bringing. Are you actually, how are you actually booking these clients then? Or maybe you're gonna comment on this, but are they just signing up for a slot through a calendar, or how do you actually go about that process?
so it was a little bit more manual whenever I first got started. And then I ended up switching over to Sprout Studio, which is like the CRM studio management system I use. Everything is completely automated, and I know so Sprout Studio has options where you can set up a calendar. I set everything up. Everything is 100% automated. My clients click on a link, they pick their time slot, they submit their deposit and they sign their contract. So everything is completely done, which is really wonderful that I don't have to do all of the back, log after a launch. I know Use Session, or I think I think it's called Sessions, but their websites use Sessions. They're a super popular option that I know a lot of photographers use also, that makes it really easy. Anything that you can do to automate and make it super easy for your clients to do on their own always helps. But it used to be a more manual process.
Yeah. And we should be, I keep restating this on probably both podcasts at this point, but the importance of leveraging the tools that we have in 2022, the technology out there is absolutely amazing. And if we're not leveraging that, especially considering how relatively inexpensive it is with all that we have built into something like Sprout, I went ahead and pulled them up. For anybody who's not familiar, sproutstudio.com, just like it sounds. We'll link to it in the show notes as well at newbiepodcast.com. But incredible opportunity to be able to leverage this kind of technology to help make our jobs a little bit easier in the process. Because the reality is we have a lot to juggle as photographers, but if we're using these tools intelligently and intentionally, then we can function a lot more efficiently and not get absolutely overwhelmed in the process. Danielle, before we go to that next point, the second point, we've got a few comments coming in. Sue is chiming in from YouTube, and she's saying great info. And Jakevius is chiming as well. What's up, Jakevius? Thanks so much for chiming. He says, greetings, everyone. And then actually, we've got a question here from Adriana. She's saying, how far out from mini sessions should you start advertising for it?
So I will book my mini sessions, depending on the season. I book my mini sessions out. We'll say I will launch about 2 months before I actually have them. Okay. The busiest season of the year is the fall for family photographers. So I will usually launch those in August. So 2-3 months, because that's when, demand seems high. For spring sessions, I'll usually do maybe 6 weeks or so. But you can, before you actually formally launch, one second. Oh, are you still there?
I'm still here. We can still see you and
hear
you.
I thought I lost audio for a second. Sorry about that. So that's like the actual launch. Like whenever I actually go live to my clients and say, here's the link, book your session. Before that, I start telling my clients in email months and months in advance, save the date. This is when these are happening. Because I have a lot of my clients that come to me for mini sessions. So they sign up and they want to know. So I just kind of, as far out as you can, a few months in advance, even from launching, just let them know when they'll be. And they get excited.
Yep. Yeah, and it is important to build in enough time, because the reality is just hitting potential clients with one email blast or one ad or one social media post really isn't going to do the trick. You got to do that time after time after time. So that's important. So we start with step one. You said book your sessions. I would almost reframe this as market your sessions, the importance of marketing those sessions, certainly in advance, as we're discussing. Take us to step two, if you will.
All right. So after you have your sessions booked, this is a part. So everything about mini sessions is mini except for the client experience. Point number 2 is do not skimp on your client experience. So this is your opportunity. People might be trying you out. This might be the first time that they're working with you. I want you to treat them to everything that a full experience would get in the sense of communication, preparation. You want them to feel well taken care of before the session, during the session, and after the session. I know, some, depending on where your price point is or where your mindset is about mini sessions, some people could, say well, I'm not investing, that extra little bit because it's my lower price sessions. But I strongly encourage that this is actually, your opportunity to do your best as far as, treating those clients to the best experience with you.
Well, I mean, if part of the intention here is to book them long-term for your regular sessions, then we need to think about impression that you're making on this. This is their first impression, their first experience with you and your brand. And so making sure that experience is incredible, just as incredible as it would be for any other client, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. That's super important.
And just a one or two follow-up questions, or really a primary follow-up question to that. When you talk about matching the client experience, communication in particular is something that you highlighted. Is that kind of the main element of that client experience that you think is most important, the proactive communication, expectation management?
Yeah, exactly. Setting communication is whether it's emails, whenever they book with you, following up with text messages, making that point of contact so that they know you're available. And then there's resources. So preparing them so that they know what to expect as far as, everything leading up to the session, like what they can expect from you, how the session will be run. So I like to tell my clients, listen, these are a lot shorter, so I'm not going to have the time I usually do, like the time freedom to actually talk with you and like set everything up. So this is exactly what you should expect on the day of. So we're going to start here, we're going to go to here, and we're going to go to here. Just anything that you can do to prepare them will help tremendously. And then, the follow-up after, whether it's gallery delivery, thank you cards, whatever you do for your clients, make sure that you're doing it all here as well.
Okay, great. So we'll start with marketing the session. Secondly, not skimping, the importance of not skimping on the client experience, and particularly the focus on really proactive communication to manage their expectations both before and after the session. What's step number 3?
All right, so then now we're actually at the session shooting. You cannot, because of your restraints on time, you cannot go into mini sessions without a plan. If you're going to wing it, it's not going to work out for you. So all of those fears that flooded me whenever I first got started, running out of time or not knowing what to shoot, you got to go into it with a plan. You got to have, basically like opposing workflow. Now I work in family photography, especially with small children. Nothing ever goes according to plan. However, you have to at least start somewhere knowing like what type of, flow you're going to start with. If you're at a location, I've made many mistakes over the past few years doing many sessions, but if you're at a location that has multiple places that, you might want to use, you can't drag your clients all over the place. You need to pick one or two, have that flow and that plan of exactly like when you're going to go from place to place. Stuff like that matters, and thinking about it ahead of time. So if you have the opportunity, go to that location and, walk it, or, time yourself on exactly how long it takes for everything, because you don't want to get stuck. I had a tree farm session the one time and I didn't realize that, I swear to you, the trees that we needed to make it to were, I kid you not, like 1 mile downhill. So I actually found myself running. And by the time I would get back to my clients, I was completely sweaty and I could barely breathe. So if anything, they probably thought, wow, this girl is dedicated. But yeah, you got to have a plan.
Yeah, and I would even argue that they should go to that location beforehand, because you're absolutely right. When you're talking about 20-minute blocks, session after session after session after session, you have to know exactly what's going on in that scenario. I think about when I was shooting weddings, and it took a little bit ultimately it took experience, but I would liken it to the scenario in that as I photographed more and more weddings, I certainly got comfortable working with constraints on time. And so if I had to do a portrait session for the bride and groom, and I literally only had 5 minutes or 10 minutes to do that, I could make it happen. But part of it was experience, certainly, but part of it was I'd also taken the time to look for locations prior to that particular session. And so I knew what I could pull from as far as options, location options, I could pull from in that session, in that particular situation, and we could just knock them out one after another very, very quickly. Had I not gone in with a plan, if I didn't know where to go or how to go about handling a portrait session with that limited amount of time in the location that we were in, then it would create for not only probably an awkward and stressful interaction, both for myself and for the end client, but ultimately the results aren't going to be as good either. And we have to think about how not having a plan will create that sense of stress, which with the limited amount of time you have for a mini session is going to minimize the impact of the session or the opportunity for even better images. So yeah, I love that you highlight that. That's really good.
All right.
Are we ready to transition to point number 4? The last.
Yes, and I'm calling this a bonus.
Okay, cool.
Because, all right, so whenever you are doing mini sessions, I feel like I just kind of keep countering all of the objections I had for myself. were time constraints on the workload that mini sessions cause. So the bonus thing is you have to plan for the workload that you're going to get from mini sessions. So my recommendation is find an editor. And that is actually where I found Photographers Edit. The very first sessions that I sent to you all were, I sent you a whole batch of mini sessions. That was, and honestly, whenever I realized that I could send away my work and take away the hours and hours and hours of editing that one, quote unquote session did for me, I felt invincible. So, you have to be realistic in exactly how much you can do, and where it's really smart to just kind of let go of control and use somebody else. So yeah, we'll call that the bonus tip, is you need to have something lined up in the back end so that you can also deliver the same quality, and speed and everything, and it doesn't bog you down.
Oh, I appreciate the shout out. And by the way, for anybody listening in, you're like, oh, they totally set this up. This was not planned. Nope. Danielle actually told me beforehand that she was going to mention us because she, as she pointed out, she began using us around the time that she started doing these mini sessions. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate the shout out genuinely, but I also just want to encourage everybody listening in. I know the idea of delegating something that feels very personal and something you want to maintain control of is a little bit nerve-wracking, but when it comes to running our business efficiently, like we were talking about just a few minutes ago, Danielle, and managing, like you said, the workload, mm-hmm. this pretty significant workload associated with doing mini session after mini session after mini session, we have to come up with efficient systems that will enable us to run our business in a more manageable way. And certainly being able to delegate editing is one of those ways that we can do that. So I appreciate you highlighting that as well. Would you say, just as a side note for anybody listening who's curious, how long did it take you to kind of get your editing style set up in Photographers Edit so that you could just kind of almost automatically just send the images in and know that they were going to be processed like you needed them to be?
Oh, that was a while ago when I did that, but not very long. The main thing was just picking, because you take reference images just to, mm-hmm. For photographers to actually share their editing style with you. The biggest thing that it took me was just actually going through and finding, the best ones that I wanted to send you guys, exporting them, and just, it was very insignificant the amount of time that it actually took me.
Well, and I would probably give you a lot of credit in that too, because photographers that know what they want going into that process, they're clear about their editing style and what it is that they want from the editor, whether it's Photographers Edit or somebody else. That experience of delegating becomes a lot better experience than mm-hmm. a photographer going in who's like, I thought I was supposed to outsource editing, so I did, but there was no clarity on their own part about what it was mm-hmm. that they wanted from that editor. And as a result, it becomes a very confusing back and forth and potentially frustrating back and forth. So clarity on your part. I know you're a very intentional individual, especially in the way that you produce or that you approach business. So I'm sure that translated as well. But everybody listening in, just a reminder that if you do want to go about delegating or outsourcing your editing, just be clear about what it is that you're looking for so that you can communicate that clearly. And we've enabled or created tools at Photographers Edit that makes that easier as well. photographersedit.com for anybody who is curious, and we'll link to that in the show notes. Thanks for that, Danielle. And I appreciate the very, as you pointed out at the very beginning, the very practical nature of this conversation. But I know that we've also just kind of skimmed the surface almost, because it's a pretty loaded topic. Yeah. And you didn't ask me to do this, but will you just share briefly what further education that you offer to photographers who want a little bit more help with this process? And I think you actually mentioned to me too beforehand that you've got a freebie associated with this topic that you can give away.
I do. I loved mini sessions so much. Whenever I actually created a free guide for photographers, and the title escapes me right now, but it's all about, there's 5 secrets on how to actually maximize your mini sessions. So it's at danielleblewittphotography.com/minis. We'll take you to the page, or you can find it on my website. And it's just a guide that just kind of tells you like my top 5 secrets on how to actually make the most out of your mini sessions, little tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. I also have, a lot of my stuff is marketing focused. So I have, different content that I send out to photographers every week on tips and tricks on how to market their businesses better, run their businesses more smoothly. And then coming up in the slower season, I also have It's called the Photography Business Bootcamp course. It is a comprehensive course that actually takes photographers from, it could be anybody who, is just starting a business, or somebody that just kind of only has dabbled in starting their business and really actually wants to invest into creating a bigger business with it. I have that course, and I also have a website design for photographers course, which will go live in February. So thanks for
There's
asking.
a lot there. Yeah, no, absolutely. And tell me one more time what the URL is for the mini session info.
It's danielleblewittphotography.com/minis, MINIS.
Okay, perfect. We'll put that in the show notes at newbiepodcast.com. And of course, for those of you that are live streaming, you can go do that right away. We'll have this all in the show notes for the audio version of this episode, which is actually going to come out tomorrow, the 15th of December. So you all look for that at newbiepodcast.com. Danielle, again, thank you so much for being willing to share with all of our audience. It's a super practical conversation, which is ultimately our goal here. For those of you listening in, if you have further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Danielle. I'm actually going to post this up here for anybody who missed it at the outset, but Danielle Blewitt Photography on Instagram, and make sure that you send her a DM if you've got questions there about the various education that she offers, and she'll be glad to help you out. All right, Danielle,
thank you so much.
Everybody, thanks for chiming in. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon.